broken. So I'm nice and alive. I can't see that I'm actually, it's very interesting. Sometimes I come in through this system and it shows very clearly where I am. Other times it doesn't. So I'm hoping that I am on my page. We all know there's a lag here. And today, if you've had the opportunity to read the introduction, this today is around the differences. It's day 15. So I'm bringing you some content today, and the content is actually around the differences between coaching, training, basically the differences. And so we'll just check and make sure this is streaming into somewhere. And here we go, let's find this. So I'm just going to find my group, see if it's actually streaming into the group, because for some reason it's not showing me the usual little thing. So there we go. See if it's going into the group or if it's going onto the page. It doesn't really make much difference. There we go. So I'm in the group right now, so just checking to see if this is streaming live. Yep, it's going. That's great. Make sure that the sound is turned down. But that then means that if you put any comments in, if anybody jumps in, you can see the comments. So let's just sort out my screens so that I can have a little look at the screen I want to. And I wanted to talk a bit today about the differences. You probably saw there that I put it in the description about the inner game. Now, way back in the end of the 1970s, I learned to ski. I was a bit old to learn to ski. I was 20. And I was still a physiotherapy undergraduate student. And I took up skiing and I was completely hooked. There's just no question. I was completely hooked by this sport, and because I tend to go in depth into everything I want to learn about, it meant that I just loved it, absolutely adored it. So off I was going on my skiing holidays, and the holiday actually comprised training and learning. So the holiday wasn't just going and sitting in the ski resorts, having hot chocolate with brandy in it, although there was a lot of that too, lots of dancing and playing. A lot of it was actually around a very structured program of studying how to ski. So in the mornings, we would have a couple of hours of working with the ski instructor, an expert, and then in the afternoon, we'd be going out free skiing with our expert instructor, and we would be skiing down mountains, etc. Now, before I went skiing on the snow, I'd actually gone and practiced on a dry ski slope in Greenwich, would you believe? It was the Greenwich Barracks. And I went off skiing and learned how to ski on a dry ski slope. So when I went down and we did our tests to see which groups we'd go into, I actually went into a relatively high level group because I had a certain amount of competency. There's another story I can tell you about my first time I actually skied down a proper mountain, or actually no, it was using a pommer lift, which I couldn't do. So anyway, but when I used to go away skiing, I was introduced to the early days of the inner game, and this was published, a book that pretty much revolutionized the idea of coaching. It was initially a tennis coaching book, and then a skiing coaching book came out, and it was around the idea of moving yourself from inside yourself, thinking about what you were going to do, to moving your sense outside yourself, so that when you were learning or you were practicing doing something, you were actually letting your unconscious, your instincts, your intuition take over. And so leaving your thoughts, your worries, your cares behind was something that we used to do at the beginning of the day. And there were processes we did. Now, so that's quite a long time ago. So the actual learning about coaching and these coaching styles for me goes back to the late 1970s. So it's a long way. Now, fast forward to today, and I've been out here in what I call Facebook land for probably the last few years. And I've observed the differences between the way people are working. And I've observed how people use phrases like coaching, mentoring, training, and they sort of switch them around and they flip between one and the other. So what I wanted to do today is actually to talk about the way in which coaching can help people to unlock your potential to maximize your own performance. And the idea there is that in terms of skill, let's say, that you have a certain degree of unconscious skill. However, if what you want to do is to be able to do something, in inverted commas, better, sometimes what needs to happen is you actually have to learn more skills. So arguably, there's an overlap between helping people to learn, which can be part of coaching, helping people to learn, helping them to unlock their potential, to recognize what they can do. However, there is also an element of requiring some kind of expert teaching. So I'm going to use the analogy, the story of me learning to ski and working with a very good coach. The person I worked with was an extremely good coach. He was called Chalky White, actually, and he was an ex-police officer who had taken up skiing, had fallen in love with it, and had dedicated himself to training skiing up in the mountains. And we were in Andorra. And he had a very big reputation, and we were doing really interesting processes to play and learn through play and develop our own capabilities and competencies. Very advanced ways of learning he was introducing us to. However, he was a coach insofar as he was enabling us to understand how to put what it was we were thinking to one side, but he was also very much teaching us skills. So he was enabling us to know how to use our body and learn how to do things in a playful way so that we could then apply what we had just learned to the terrain that he then took us through in the afternoon. Now, and this is important because without a good teacher, without being aware that there is something that you can learn, what can happen is you can fall into a belief that you actually have quite a good level of competence in something where really your competence level is extremely low. So we call this part of the process of learning a competency cycle. So if I just run through what the competency cycle is, it's a 4-stage model. And the first level is called unconscious incompetence. So unconscious incompetence is where, and I'm looking at some notes here, where you don't know that you don't know about something. So you don't know that you don't know about something. So if you think of my analogy with skiing, if I didn't know that I didn't know about something, then I could think that I was quite competent, but actually unconsciously I can be very incompetent. So for example, skiing on ice, sheet ice, is very different from skiing on slushy, mushy, soft snow. Skiing on fresh powder snow is really different from skiing on thick, solid, ice deep snow that's been sitting for a few days, thawed on top and frozen again. So the actual conditions can vary. And without understanding the differences between the different situations and circumstances, you can believe that you've got your competence there, but actually you've never skied in those conditions. And just learning to do the basics, if you like, in lots of different conditions can sometimes mean you've actually got quite a good degree of competence. But this is the first stage. The first stage is unconscious incompetence. You truly don't know. If a child's never seen a bicycle, never seen a two-wheeler, you actually have no idea that you have an incompetence of riding a bike. If you don't know that there is another language, for example, in medicine, we use a completely different language to the language, and we use words in a completely different way to the way words are used every day. And people who don't know that have complete unconscious incompetence over understanding what the consultant is saying to them when they go into clinic. So I have sat with people who've gone in and not understood a word of what it is that the consultant has said. They've thought it meant something completely different, and they've been completely unconsciously incompetent. So that level of unconscious incompetence is the first level. The second level is the level of what we call conscious incompetence. That's when you know you don't know. You become aware that you lack a particular skill. All right, now the analogy with skiing I would use there is that you think you can ski down a mountain. You've done it before. You've skied this run before. You feel quite confident that you're competent to do it, and then it snows. You go out the next day, and what you discover is, no, you can't do it. Yesterday you could do this, and now you are aware that you must lack a particular skill, because something that you could do in one situation and circumstance, you realize you can't do it in another situation and circumstance. So if it's the skiing, that would be the analogy. If it's the bicycle, it might be, for example, that a child who was unconsciously incompetent because they didn't know bicycles existed, actually sees other children cycling on bikes and realizes this is something they can't do. At that point, they are aware that they've got an incompetence. So it is conscious incompetence. Or if you hear your consultant talking in a language and you realize after perhaps having somebody go to the clinic with you, actually you really don't understand what this consultant is really saying to you. So you've got a conscious incompetence. And at that point, it might be that that person decides that they want to say something, or it might be that the child decides that they want to learn the skills to ride a bike. Now, the next level of competence is where you have conscious competence. Yes? So you've learned to do something, but you still have to think about it in order to do it. So you're skiing down the mountain, or I'm skiing down the mountain, watching, being very aware, thinking about what I'm doing, every move I've got to make, etc. It'll be a child is riding a bike, but they fall off if they stop watching where they're going. Yes, so they've got to keep looking out for where they're going. So that's a level of conscious competence. You're consciously competent, but you've just got to be mindful about what you do the whole time. Now let's move on. The next level after this is going to be unconscious competence. So at a level of unconscious competence, you've learned how to do something so well that it's completely hardwired into your brain, right? You genuinely, after, let's say, a month of skiing with an expert teacher and practicing, you go down the same first run that you did the first couple of days, and you realize you've learned how to do something so well that it's just become hardwired into your brain, and you just no longer have to think about it. You can just do it. You can just ski down. Where that particular run, and I know when I first started skiing, there used to be a long run which went from top to bottom of the mountain. It was a green run, which is the really easy one. And I know that it was almost a whole afternoon to get the group down this run at the beginning of learning, and it was with breaks and with our teacher stopping and starting and giving us confidence, etc. And by the time we'd finished maybe a week or 10 days of ski practice, this was our closing run that we did at the end of the day. We didn't think anything of it. We just skied down it. It took us minutes to do, literally, and we could see all the groups of people standing around, and we had that level of unconscious competence where we just didn't have to think how we did it, and we just did it. And in fact, if we thought about it too hard, we might not have been able to do it at all. So those levels of unconsciously incompetent, consciously incompetent, consciously competent, and then unconscious competence apply to everything that we do. The reason that I'm raising this today is because of the difference between coaching, training, therapy, counseling, etc., etc. Now, when you're having teaching from an expert like my ski instructor, they will be using an element of coaching because they're going to want to be helping. They were helping me to learn. They were putting me in an environment which was fun. It was play and it was enjoyable. They were helping me to learn. It's very present focused, and they were facilitating the learning. And it was something I wanted to do. But you know, it was an expert. I was working with an expert in that field. So this person was an expert. They could ski up there with all the top ski instructors. They were amazing. They had such unconscious competence. They were taking part in competitions, and they really did know what they were talking about. They'd been there, they'd done it, they could still remember what it was like to learn. However, they were an expert in that actual thing. Now, with coaching, oftentimes, I mean, we say in coaching the individual has the answers to their own problems. However, that also means the coach is often not the subject expert. So, for example, a business coach might be a business coach who works on accountability, encouraging you to get a task done, completed. It might be that they work around enabling you to unlock your own potential, and that might be your time. It might be some of the resources that you've got. And the focus is very much on the individual and what's going on, often inside their head. So the coach could be anyone in that context. So, and the coach is not really at that stage teaching you skills. And this is interesting where someone is maybe looking for a business coach, let's say, but actually they don't know how to structure their business. They don't know anything about marketing. They don't know anything about planning. And actually what they need is a really good teacher. They really, really, really need to go on a really good teaching course to learn about business, about marketing, and there is a big difference between working with a coach and working with a teacher. Because a teacher, a training school, you're going to attend a training school to learn how to do something. So one of the people that I work with and have been working with this year, in fact more than one, two of the people that I'm working with they're very good teachers. They are very good experts in their field. Yes, there's elements of coaching, but they're not selling what they do as coaching services. And this is important because there is a big difference. So the final thing I want to raise is the idea of therapy or counseling. So when we talk about, learning, coaching, counseling, often with counseling, we're moving through time. We might be looking at things in the past, and we might be future pacing. We might be looking at barriers from the past that are stopping somebody from moving forward, let's say. So this comes into, for example, in hypnosis. In hypnosis, when somebody has got a problem that is a block, we may be going on a timeline or a journey into the past to enable the person to gather up some resources to overcome the problem that they had, and then to come forward into the future and move on, so that actually the problem that they're getting is no longer there. So Therapy and coaching, therapy and counseling, etc., tends to be very much more around a problem resolution. So it is a block, and it might be either an internal or an external block. So I'm going to be producing some little teachings, expert teachings on different topics to do with your health and wealth, and to do with moving from where you are right now into the future. Now, these work very well alongside coaching, because in coaching, remember, if I go back to my ski instructor, that whole package of what was being put together meant that I was getting the expert teaching. In the morning, we'd start off with some of the inner game mindset work, leaving what we were thinking about behind, getting us into a good place, learning how to do things in a fun way. So in other words, we were being helped to learn, a very positive thing. We were playing games that seemed to not have anything to do with what it was that we were wanting to do, but actually we were learning how to put into practice skills through playing with these games. And then we would practice in the afternoon, free skiing, having fun, going out, having had a nice lunch, and the whole package was an amazing, it's almost like a VIP day, if you follow. So I'm going to be putting together starting over Christmas actually, I'm going to be putting together for the training institute that I'm launching in January. I'm going to be putting together a lot of the what's. What do I do? How do I do it? And what do I do? How do I do that? And what do I do? So the how and the what to do. Coaching is always about how. It's always in the present tense. It's always about raising your capability to use the skills that you've got, but actually learning and training is around actually having more skills, being put into a situation where you use yourself and you discover and learn how to do things in a new way. It's like learning that language. If you want to learn how to speak French, you're not already going to have all the resources inside of you to know all of the words and all of the language and all of the phrases, how to spell everything. No, that's a skill. If you wanted to learn how to do karate or judo, etc., then you'd actually have to learn how to do the technique, how to be effective and efficient. So the judoki, remember I used to work with at international level with sport and athletes through from the 1980s, because I was into sport, through to 2000. I was working almost exclusively with athletes, and they were really receptive to learning new tools, skills, tricks, ways to use themselves. So I hope this has been helpful today. I hope you get some value from it. As I say, it's the 17th day of Christmas already, December, and I will be leaving this in the group, and I look forward to coming back in later on and actually finding out, hold on, whether anyone has seen this and if they have left any comments. I will also be putting this up on YouTube. Take care. Have a lovely, wonderful rest of the day. Bye.